Hey guys, tonight we're crouching low beside a Sumerian accountant, barefoot, slightly sunburnt, and currently deep in concentration as he fiddles with a handful of tiny clay tokens under the flickering glow of an oil lamp. You can almost smell the mixture of sweat, dust, and wet earth. The tokens, some shaped like cones, others like spheres or cylinders, are no toys. Each one means something. One cone, maybe a sheep, a sphere, perhaps a jar of oil. This isn't art. It's accounting. And no, you probably won't survive this job unless you're really good at not losing small objects in the mud. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the Mesopotamian plain. There's nothing quite like a late Bronze Age evening. A few goats bleat somewhere off to the left. A child screams because they've stepped in dung again. You duck into a low clay structure, a sort of ancient office, and find yourself face to face with the birth of administration. This Sumerian man, hunched over a reed mat, isn't a priest or poet. He's an early bureaucrat, a glorified bean counter, literally, because in front of him, there's a clay bowl full of little tokens. Each one a stand-in for an item someone else wants to count. Sheep, barley, jars of beer. These things are everywhere, and everyone's memory is, well, not great. So, the people of this pre-writing world invented a way to hold memory in their hands. You reach down and pick up a small, teardrop-shaped token. It's weirdly satisfying to hold. Smooth, sun-baked. You imagine carrying around a pouch filled with these, shaking it like maracas to remember that you still owe the temple 2 goats and a bushel of grain. Historians still argue whether these tokens were always meant to symbolize objects, or if they just became that way after enough repetition. The system works surprisingly well. Farmers drop off their goods at temples or granaries, and the scribes, if we can call them that yet, store the corresponding tokens. Sometimes, they'd seal them in clay envelopes called bully, which is just a fancy way to say a ball of clay that hides your account. The tokens inside are like the receipts, and the seal outside shows a record of what's in there. Crack it open, and bam, you've got your inventory. But here's the kicker. These people still don't write. Not really. No alphabets. No letters. Just objects representing other objects. The only real abstract thinking going on here is figuring out how many of these things you can fit in your pocket before they start falling out during a dust storm. And yet, in this very primitive mess, something revolutionary is stirring. Without realizing it, these accountants are laying the foundations for writing. Not for poetry or love letters, but for keeping tabs on sheep. You'd think writing would start with something grand, but no. It starts in the most boring, bureaucratic corner of civilization imaginable. Filing. It's humbling, really. Not a philosopher. Not a prophet. Just a sweaty, clay-covered man in a mud brick room, trying to make sure someone doesn't lie about how many jars of fish oil they brought last Tuesday. You're standing in a wide, sun-baked field now. There's the sound of bleating all around you, and a trail of hoof prints leads off into the distance. You follow them, your sandals squelching faintly in the dirt, and eventually catch up with a shepherd, lean, weather-worn, and absolutely surrounded by sheep. It smells earthy. He's not worried about poetry or politics. He's worried about how many sheep left with him this morning, and how many he'll still have by nightfall. So how does he keep track? You guessed it, tokens. Back then, numbers weren't 1, 2, 3. They were real things you could hold. If he had 37 sheep, he'd carry 37 matching clay tokens, probably shaped like little pebbles, each one standing in for a sheep. Every animal that wandered off meant one less token in the pouch. It's an elegant system for a society that hadn't even figured out the wheel yet. But what happens when you need to tell someone else how many sheep you counted? Let's say you drop your tokens into a sealed clay envelope before you head to the city temple. You close it, stamp it, and carry it like a little round briefcase. At the temple, the priest receives your bully, cracks it open, and compares the tokens to the expected count. If the numbers don't add up, oh, you're in trouble. And trust me, temple trouble is not the kind that ends with a friendly warning. It's surprisingly advanced when you think about it. This is well before writing as we know it. There's no alphabet, no paper, and certainly no calculators, unless you count fingers and anxiety. Yet somehow, this society builds systems for auditing, record-keeping, and verification that rival modern bureaucracy in complexity. Historians still debate whether these token systems were used more for personal tracking, like a shepherd counting his own animals, or for official audits by temple authorities. The truth is probably both. People are people, and people like to prove they're not lying. Here's the quirky part. They didn't have a standard size for these tokens. They came in different shapes and sizes depending on the region, the item, and even the personal taste of the accountant. It's like if today's Excel spreadsheets all used different shapes for the same number, depending on what city you lived in. Confusing? Absolutely. But it worked. And sometimes, they'd even start using tokens together to represent combinations. A cone plus a sphere might mean 3 she promised, but only 2 delivered. That's when things start getting complicated, and when the first whispers of writing start to emerge. You're still watching the shepherd. He pulls a little bag from his waist and counts the tokens one by one. He nods. The sheep match. He mutters something to himself, not in words we'd recognize. More likely just grunts and tonal clues, but enough to mean all present and accounted for. And you realize something important. These clay tokens aren't just for tracking animals. They're early memory aids, physical representations of mental labor. They help people plan, report, and negotiate. In a world without writing, these tiny clay pebbles are doing the heavy lifting of civilization. You begin to understand how something so simple, just a lump of clay, might eventually become a wedge-press symbol on a tablet. But that's still a few generations off. For now, it's just sheep, and the shepherd's rhythmic counting, out loud, in time with each token, becomes your lullaby as the sun dips lower across the Mesopotamian plain. You're walking toward a temple now, its mud brick walls towering above the village homes, freshly swept for the arrival of offerings. You duck past a line of farmers, each holding baskets of grain or leading goats on fraying ropes. You're not here to worship, you're here to audit. Yes, welcome to the world's first tax office. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of incense, oil, and just a hint of goat. You blink and adjust to the dim light. And there, at the center of it all, is the chief priest. Not praying, not chanting, but nodding over rows of sealed clay bully. These aren't religious items. They're tax receipts. Suddenly you realize, if the gods ruled from the heavens, their priests ruled with math. The temple wasn't just a spiritual hub. It was a full-blown economic engine. Fields were farmed for the gods. Goods were brought as offerings. But gods didn't eat, which meant their human representatives had to manage the goods. And boy, did they manage. You spot a younger scribe, kneeling near a large bowl of barley, pressing his thumb into soft clay to mark deliveries. He's surrounded by token pouches and is muttering under his breath. It's not prayer, it's math. In this world, the divine is measured, weighed, and counted. Historians still argue whether temples controlled the economy out of religious devotion or because they were the only institutions with enough organization to pull it off. Either way, their accounting systems needed to evolve fast. One mistake, and someone might lose half their barley ration. Or worse, be accused of stealing from the gods. And let's be honest, if you're going to mess up math, best not to do it with holy property involved. Here's a quirky side note. Some priests were known to carry their own personal token sets, like pocket calculators in pouch form. They'd even decorate them with tiny stamps or patterns so no one could accuse them of swapping tokens during disputes. Imagine walking into an audit with your custom calculator and a very smug look on your face. But something was changing. You notice one priest squinting at a sealed bully, annoyed. He grumbles, breaks it open, checks the tokens inside, then immediately restamps it and mumbles something about not doing this again. And you realize this system is breaking under its own weight. Too many tokens, too many variables, too much guessing. So what's the solution? Imprint the tokens into the soft clay before sealing it. That way, even if you lose the pouch, or someone accidentally drops it in the canal, you've still got a record etched onto the surface. One small step for bureaucracy, one giant leap for written symbols. And so, Just like that, the evolution of writing nudges forward, not through poetry or curiosity, but through grumpy temple staff tired of cracking clay balls. You're sitting cross-legged now in the corner of a small clay room, watching a man tap soft mud with deliberate precision. It looks like he's drawing, but what he's doing is even stranger. He takes a token, say, a cone, and presses it gently into a tablet of moist clay, leaving a little imprint. Then he does the same with a sphere. Press, lift. No flourishes, no decoration, just a fossil of administration. This might not seem impressive, but it's groundbreaking. He's creating a flat representation of information, removing the need for physical tokens. The logic is simple. Why carry 30 separate pebbles when you can just press their impressions into a single slab? It's like going from coins to a ledger. Lighter, neater, and way less noisy when you walk. You glance at the tablet. Each shape is a ghost of the original token. And when you think about it, this is the moment where writing as a concept starts to emerge. Not letters, not language, but still a record, a memory frozen in clay. The problem, though, is that it's messy. What if someone moves the tablet before it dries? What if someone presses the wrong token and forgets? Mistakes happen, and temple audits aren't exactly forgiving. Historians still argue whether this shift was driven by practicality or by a genuine conceptual leap. Was it genius or just laziness? Either way, it caught on. Here's something quirky. Some early tablets still have the actual token impressions and the token sealed inside. It's like using both a flash drive and a printed backup, just in case. Scribes weren't taking any chances. Over time, though, these impressions began to change. A scribe might draw a quick symbol instead of pressing a token, maybe a quick circle instead of a sphere, or a triangle instead of a cone. Why? Because pressing was time-consuming, drawing was faster, and with enough repetition, symbols start to gain meaning. So now you're watching as someone invents the shortcut that becomes symbolic language. One lazy afternoon turns into an innovation that will outlast empires. The man scratches a simple line beside a wedge. That means field. He adds a squiggle. That's barley. Together, a barley field. Suddenly, we're not just counting anymore. We're describing. You smile as the scribe nods at his work. He doesn't know it yet, but he's helping to kill the token. And like that, the pouch becomes obsolete. A whole economy, compressed onto a hand-sized slab. And the weirdest part? It all started because people were tired of carrying too much clay. The sun is high over Uruk now, and you're wiping sweat from your brow as you peek into a scribal workshop, noisy, dusty, and filled with the smell of damp clay and overcooked onions. In the corner, a boy is trying not to cry as an older man points at his tablet with the intensity of a tax inspector. The reason? His wedge marks are crooked. Disaster. You step closer, looking over the boy's shoulder. Gone are the old token impressions. Instead, there are shapes, lines, wedges, circles, hooks, all scratched neatly with a stylus. Tokens are officially retired. Rest in clay. These are pictographs, pictures that represent things. A loaf-shaped mark for bread, a wavy line for water, a jagged star for the gods above. It's primitive, but functional. Each symbol stands in for an object, a count, or sometimes an action. Welcome to writing, version 1.0. The shift happened gradually. First, tokens were pressed into tablets. Then those impressions were mimicked by stylus. Then, over time, the stylus grew confident, like someone who just discovered keyboard shortcuts and can't stop bragging. The symbols got cleaner, faster, more abstract. A picture of a cow turned into a weird triangle with legs. A drawing of a fish became 2 slashes and a dot. The world of images was being replaced by the world of signs. Historians still debate whether this change was standardized top-down, from temples, or developed organically in markets, homes, and taverns. Some evidence suggests both. When people need to communicate things efficiently, they invent shortcuts. And the human brain is nothing if not shortcut hungry. One quirky discovery. Early pictographs often included little comic strips showing a story. A fish beside a basket, fish delivery, a fish above a temple, religious offering, a fish under a foot, maybe an accident. Historians aren't sure, but ancient memes were definitely a thing. But let's be clear, this wasn't writing in the way we understand it. You couldn't use it to write a novel or a speech. It was accounting language, meant to record things. Business led the charge, and emotions came last. You crouch beside a tablet dryer now, basically a sunlit shelf where rows of tablets are hardening. They're short, dense, and all business. Deliveries, trades, labor logs, the kind of stuff that would make you snore if you weren't so amazed by how organized it all is. One scribe slaps his forehead and adds a symbol he forgot. Too late. The tablet has already started drying. He scribbles a correction on the back. You laugh, realizing that this is humanity's first documented typo. And suddenly, you feel it. The weight of transformation. The leap from objects to symbols. From 3D shapes to scratched marks that carry meaning. No one planned to invent writing. It just sort of happened. A side effect of grain, taxes, and the universal human need to complain in permanent form. You're in a sun-baked field again, but this time it's not filled with sheep. It's dotted with markers. Little clay tablets shoved into the ground next to patches of barley and emmer wheat. You frown. Are they labeling their crops? Sort of. You lean in and read one. It's not a love letter. It's a rent notice. It shows the name of the landholder, the tenant farmer, the size of the field, the expected yield, and what percentage goes to the temple. It's bureaucratic poetry. And just like that, land management becomes a literary genre. You follow a farmer trudging back from the field to a small outpost near the irrigation ditch. He pulls out a tablet and hands it to a bored-looking scribe, who nods and stores it in a wooden crate. Each crate is organized by season and crop. You're witnessing the dawn of data storage. Historians still argue whether these tablets were primarily for fairness or control. Did they help farmers prove they weren't being cheated, or did they just make it easier for landlords to enforce debts? Honestly, both. Writing, from its earliest uses, carried both power and protection. It could shield you, or expose you. And here's your quirky moment. Some of the oldest rent tablets include little doodles. Not always for utility. Sometimes just boredom. You find one with a cow wearing what looks suspiciously like a crown, a farmer with a sense of humor, or a scribe making editorial comments. You're handed a tablet to carry back to the temple. Be careful, it's still drying. The surface is rough, filled with rows of wedge-shaped marks. You squint. This one isn't a pictograph. These are abstract marks, cuneiform. Instead of drawing things, the scribes are pressing meaning into the clay with stylus tips. Symbols now stand for syllables, words, grammar. Not just barley, but barley that was due but not delivered. You realize you're holding the earliest paper trail of human broken promises. One line jumps out. A tenant is short on his delivery. There's a note. Blamed flood. You smirk. The first written excuse. You imagine the fallout. Someone reading that tablet days later and sighing heavily before marching off to collect what they're owed. This is law in motion. Written record. Proof. Accountability. And it's all happening on slabs of clay no bigger than a paperback. The clay is cool against your fingertips. The impressions are deep. You whisper the symbols to yourself, not knowing the language, but feeling the logic. This isn't art. This isn't poetry. This is survival. You tuck the tablet under your arm and start walking, wondering just how much debt one could fit on a shelf before it topples. You wake up in the back of a Sumerian tavern. The floor is sticky with something you pray is spilled beer. The place is buzzing. Laughter, slurred Sumerian, the thunk of ceramic mugs. This isn't a religious ceremony. It's a payroll office disguised as a party. You inch forward through the crowd. No menus here. The barkeep already knows what you're owed. You're handed a foamy cup of barley beer. Not because you paid in silver, but because your name is on a clay tablet behind the counter. Welcome to payday, ancient Mesopotamian style. The workers around you, canal diggers, field hands, errand runners, aren't getting coins. They're getting rations, beer, bread, oil, and every single portion is tracked, in writing. The tavern keeper ducks under the counter, pulls out a flat tablet, and double-checks a name before sliding over another pint. It's a surreal mix of bureaucratic precision and total chaos. Somewhere in this pub, a scribe is probably tipsy, still updating the beer logs. You sneak a peek at the tablet. Neat rows of cuneiform, each one a record of who got how much. It's not just bookkeeping. It's trust. Proof. It says, you worked. You earned this. Historians still argue whether these rations were wages or state welfare. Some say laborers were paid as part of a state redistribution system. Others believe they were more like employees. The lines blur. Ancient economies didn't follow today's rules, but they still needed receipts. Here's a quirky gem. Archaeologists once found a receipt for beer owed to a monkey trainer. You heard that right. A trained monkey, possibly for entertainment, or maybe just morale, was considered important enough to be budgeted in beer. Priorities. You notice something else. Symbols have grown weirder. Instead of full drawings, everything's turned into simplified wedges. Triangles, slashes, chevrons. It's faster to write this way, especially when there's a line of thirsty farmers behind you. Writing, it turns out, isn't just about clarity, it's about speed. You watch a boy copying ration entries under his master's supervision. His tablet is full of scratch-outs. The stylus slips. He groans. You've just seen the world's earliest frustrated intern. The tavern isn't just a place for drinking. It's a hub for information exchange. Someone's whispering about grain prices rising. Someone else is swapping news from a nearby city. In between gulps, records are kept, promises made, and deliveries arranged. Literacy and ale go hand in hand. You finish your drink. It's warm and sour, but oddly satisfying. Outside, the sun setting behind the city walls. You step into the cooling evening, the air heavy with smoke and dust, and realize the world may be old, but the problems are familiar. People still want to get paid, still need receipts, and still argue over who had the last drink. You're back inside a scribe's office now, quieter this time. Candles flicker on the wall, their wax pooling beside reeds and drying tablets. The scribe at the center is unusually still, focused. He isn't writing about beer or sheep today. He's trying something harder, ideas. You creep closer. His brow is furrowed. He dips his stylus and scratches out the symbol for head. Then 1-4-E. You pause. That doesn't mean someone ate ahead. It means think. What? Welcome to the messy, magical birth of abstract writing. It turns out, you can only go so far with pictures of sheep in jars. Eventually, people want to say more. On a field is easy. But what about, I wish I owned a field? Or, he said it was his, but he's lying. Pictographs weren't enough. You needed a way to show grammar. Tone. Perspective. That meant a new tool. Phonetic writing. Symbols that stood for sounds, not just things. At first, it's clumsy. To write a name like Kalama, you draw a fish, kala, and a water jar. Boom, Kalama. Get it? It's pun writing. Scribes became pun masters, stringing together sounds using pictures to represent how a word sounded, not what it meant. Historians still debate whether this system came from foreign trade, trying to write foreign names, or from oral poetry being recorded for the first time. But by the time you're watching, there's no turning back. Writing has been unleashed from the world of stuff. You notice a side tablet where someone tried, and failed, to write love. The attempt. A heart shape, a bird, and something that might be a goose. It's adorable. It's nonsense. But it shows a scribe trying to do something new. Express emotion. Here's your quirky moment. Scribes sometimes added helper signs to remind readers how to pronounce a name or clarify meaning. These became known as determinatives, little clues sprinkled in like stage directions. The ancient version of saying, "This is sarcasm." Now the writing system is getting layered. You've got logograms, one sign equals one word, phonograms, one sign equals one sound, and determinatives, extra flavor. It's chaos, but a beautiful kind. You look around the room. Walls are lined with tablets. One is a legal contract, one a temple hymn. One is just a list of goat names, which includes stubborn and bites. The scribe leans back, exhausted. He's not just documenting barley anymore. He's building a language from clay. And as the night deepens, you hear only the scratching of stylus on tablet, the soft heartbeat of civilization learning to speak with symbols. You're standing at the foot of a palace wall now, squinting up at a freshly carved slab of stone. No taxes here, no barley or goats. Just one enormous message from a king to, well, everyone. The scribe beside you is sweating, not just from the heat. This inscription is high stakes. Because when a king writes something, it's not just for record keeping. It's for power. You tilt your head and read the first lines. In Merkur, king of Arata, chosen by the gods, and so on. Classic royal intro. Big divine flex. Then come the threats. Whoever removes this tablet shall be cursed. Yep, that tracks. Suddenly, writing isn't just about trade. It's about authority. You step back, watching another worker hammer the same message into a smaller, portable clay version. Royal decrees weren't limited to city walls. They were duplicated, archived, distributed. Writing had become the king's loudest voice. Historians still argue whether kings themselves were literate or just relied on scribes. Either way, they understood the power of permanence. Spoken orders fade. Written ones echo. Here's a fun detail. Some kings actually faked age on their inscriptions. They'd write in old-fashioned script styles to make the message seem ancient, like saying, "Ye old bakery," to make your muffins sound mystical. Even back then, branding mattered. You step into the palace archive, where rows of clay tablets sit neatly on shelves. Some hold laws, others correspondence with other rulers. There's even one addressed to a foreign queen about a missing shipment of lapis lazuli. Even royalty had delivery problems. And somewhere in here, tucked among the tablets, is the first great political weapon, propaganda. One king writes that his rival wept like a child after surrendering. Is it true? Who knows? But now it's on clay, and that makes it real. You run your fingers over the wedge marks. Some are bold, angular. Others, delicate and clean. Different scribes, different tones. One writes like a drill sergeant, another like a poet. But they all serve the same master, the word of the king. Even the layout matters. Important parts are centered, raised, framed with decorative symbols. It's a visual performance. You're not just reading power, you're feeling it. And here's the real kicker. These royal texts weren't only meant for the literate. Most people couldn't read, but they knew what a tablet meant. If a king's words were carved in stone, you didn't argue. You obeyed. You leave the palace behind, your ears still ringing with imagined royal commands. Writing has now crossed the threshold, from memory aid to legal force, from personal ledger to public law. And suddenly, it's not just what is written, but who has the right to write it. That matters most. You step into a classroom now. Yes, a classroom, but don't expect desks and blackboards. It's a shaded courtyard behind a temple, the air filled with the sound of stylus tapping and young boys groaning under the weight of clay tablets. Welcome to the Adaba, literally tablet house, Sumer Scribe School, where literacy is learned the hard way. You glance at the instructor, a tired man with ink-stained fingers and zero patience left. He holds up a model tablet. Today's lesson is wedge alignment and proper spacing. The students moan. One whispers that he'd rather shovel dung than copy the word king 50 times. Fair enough. You sit beside a boy named Turi. He's just 9, but already knows 20 symbols. His tablet is smeared with mistakes. His hand shakes as he recarves a symbol for ox. The stylus snaps. He almost cries. You pat his shoulder. He glares at you. Scribe school was no joke. Students drilled basic signs, then memorized long lists. Animals, grains, tools, names of gods. Then came proverbs, riddles, dialogues. Eventually, they'd copy full texts, including epics and legal codes. Hundreds of symbols, all in clay. Historians still argue whether literacy was truly widespread among scribes or limited to a professional elite. But one thing's clear, becoming a scribe took years. And those who succeeded became powerful. Here's a quirky discovery. Students sometimes scribble doodles in the margins. Cats, stylized eyes, even rude jokes about their teachers. One famous tablet ends with a line, "He beat me, and I learned." Brutal, but apparently effective. You watch as Turi finally gets the spacing right. His teacher nods. He beams. It's a tiny moment, but a real triumph. You look around. These boys will grow up to keep accounts, record laws, maybe even write the king's decrees. But for now, they're kids, learning, sweating, and dreaming of the day when they'll no longer be yelled at for putting the wedge upside down. Some tablets here are for practice only, meant to be reused. The clay gets smoothed over at the end of the day. Others are permanent. The best work is stored. If you're good enough, your lessons become reference material. One senior student writes with both hands, left for numbers, write for words. Show off. And now you see it. The scribes aren't just learning symbols. They're learning power. In a world where most people can't read, the scribe becomes a gatekeeper. Want to buy land? Need to record a will? Have to accuse someone of theft? Call a scribe. You leave the adaba as the students chant sign lists in unison, their voices rising into the warm Mesopotamian evening. A strange kind of music. And in that moment, you realize writing may have started with numbers, but now it's a sacred skill. A ticket to status, safety, and a life above the mud. You stroll through a sleepy neighborhood in Lagash now, and the smell of warm bread drifts past your nose. A pot clinks. A baby cries. A goat knocks over someone's laundry. And sitting outside a doorway, scratching into a palm-sized clay tablet, is a woman writing a shopping list. Wait, what? You blink and step closer. It's true. The tablet doesn't record land deeds or temple taxes. It lists fish, beer, onions, and some kind of reed bundle. The writing is casual, almost rushed. This isn't a scribe's hand. This is everyday literacy. Writing has finally come home. Not everyone could write. Not even most people. But by now, the idea of writing had trickled downward. In a merchant's stalls, street corners, and family life. You could pay a scribe to help write a letter. Or maybe a neighbor's teenage son had taken lessons. Either way, writing is no longer sacred and elite. It's becoming useful. You follow a boy delivering a tablet to another house. He knocks, hands it over, and gets a fig in return. A thank you note? A flirtatious message? A tab from last week's stew party? It could be anything. The scribe class might still hold the secrets of law and record-keeping, but regular people are catching on. Historians still argue just how widespread this functional literacy was. Was it mostly professional scribes mimicking mundane writing on behalf of others? Or did writing genuinely spread through the middle class? There's no consensus, but the evidence of casual tablets, found in homes, ovens, and even garbage heaps, suggests that writing was no longer only about temples and kings. Now here's a fun tidbit. Someone once uncovered a breakup letter from ancient Mesopotamia. It was polite, dramatic, and just a bit petty. The writer accused the recipient of not visiting enough and hinted that another suitor might be more attentive. Ancient drama, preserved in clay. Back on the street, you spot a merchant carving numbers onto a tablet beside her scales. She's selling flax and fish oil. Prices shift fast. Writing keeps her honest, and her customers cautious. Inside a nearby home, someone is drafting a will. A short one. To my daughter, 1 ox, 2 bracelets, 1 small shrine. You can hear the pride in the voice of the scribe reading it aloud. It's not just property, it's proof of care. You pass another home and notice a tablet hanging by the door. It reads, "Out, back at sundown." You laugh. The world's first sticky note. This is where writing becomes normal. It doesn't need an altar or a palace anymore. It just needs a reason. And for every poem about a god or proclamation from a king, there's a far less glamorous tablet. One about fish deliveries, sick goats, or why the neighbor's donkey is always tied too close to your door. Writing didn't stay on the throne. It climbed down, grabbed a beer, and joined the rest of us. You're in a bustling trading outpost now, where Sumerian blends with Akkadian, where Elamite traders haggle over grain, and where language itself is a battlefield. Clay tablets fly between scribes like gossip at a wedding. You look down and see something strange. 2 scripts on 1 tablet. The top half is Sumerian. The bottom, Akkadian. 1 city, 2 tongues. You stepped into a linguistic power shift. Sumerian was the first language ever written, but it wasn't destined to last. As politics and people shifted, so did language. The Akkadians, Semitic speakers from the north, weren't content to just adopt Sumerian writing. They adapted it, twisted it, made it their own. Suddenly, cuneiform signs had double duty. Some stood for Sumerian words, others for Akkadian syllables. One symbol could mean king, mountain, or oh no, not this one again. Context was everything. If you weren't trained, you were toast. Historians still debate whether the scribes resisted this change or embraced it as a natural evolution. Some evidence suggests grumbling. Other signs point to innovation. But one thing's clear. Language is a living beast, and writing has to chase it. Here's a quirky discovery. Bilingual tablets from this era often include help marks, little notes meant to remind the reader which language they're in. It's the ancient equivalent of clicking Translate Page. You slip into a classroom nearby and see a teacher scolding a student for mixing scripts. The kid looks devastated. But later that same day, he nails a bilingual proverb. The fox says to the raven, "Your words are feathers." It's nonsense, but beautifully written nonsense. Out in the market, scribes are earning a premium for translation services. A merchant hands over a letter and receives 2 copies. One in Sumerian for the temple, one in Akkadian for the client. Writing now has dialects, accents, even slang. One clever scribe uses this to his advantage. He writes a tablet full of gossip, coded in layered language, then reads it dramatically in the tavern, earning free drinks. Literacy, meet performance art. And here's the real kicker. By now, most tablets are written in Akkadian, but Sumerian, still taught in schools. Revered, like Latin today, the sacred tongue of scribes. The clay may be the same, but the voice on it is changing, and you can feel that shift echo across every page. Writing doesn't belong to one people anymore. It's gone global, or at least intercity. You're sitting cross-legged in the corner of an archive now. It's cool inside, dry, and quiet enough to hear your own breath. Shelves line the walls, stone and wood stacked high with clay tablets, some as small as your palm, others big as dinner plates. You're in the middle of the world's first library. It doesn't look like much. No marble busts, no camelot aisles. But here lies centuries of knowledge, grain records, tax laws, star charts, omens, hymns, king lists, even medical recipes for things like goat madness and headworms. Which, just for the record, sound worse than they probably were. You brush your fingers along the edge of a tablet labeled with a seal. It reads, "For the chief scribe only. Do not remove." Even ancient librarians had rules. Most of what you see is in cuneiform, etched with precision, file by topic. Temple debts over here, legal verdicts over there, and in the center, myths and stories. Because even the most bureaucratic civilizations need their bedtime tales. One tablet catches your eye, the Epic of Gilgamesh. A flood, a king, a friend named Enkidu who's more beast than man. It's sad, moving, and, somehow, 3,000 years old. You flip to a broken edge where part of the tale is lost forever. A cliffhanger, courtesy of time. Historians still argue whether these stories were recorded for entertainment, ritual, or propaganda. Probably all 3. But what matters is that someone thought they were worth writing down. Here's something charming. Some of these tablets include copyist notes. I have copied this tablet with accuracy. Or, if there is a mistake, it is not my fault. The world's earliest disclaimers. You peek into a side chamber where damaged tablets are being restored. Scribes re-etch the fading signs, while others try to match missing pieces. The whole process is meticulous, reverent. They're not just copying data, they're preserving memory. You come across a bin labeled useless and find scribbles, half-finished proverbs, even a drawing of what might be a dancing donkey. Not every thought was sacred. Some were just human. You leave the archive a little overwhelmed. Writing has gone from tokens to tablets, from numbers to names, from ledgers to legend. It's become more than memory. It's culture. It's power. It's immortality, pressed into clay. And yet, all of it, every tax record, every hymn, every cheeky proverb, was baked and buried, lost to dust, forgotten, until someone dug it up again, thousands of years later, and said, "Wait, what is this?" You're standing in a desert trench now. The year is 1850, give or take. Wind rustles through half-buried bricks. In the distance, 2 men with pickaxes argue about whether the thing they've just found is garbage or something world-changing. Spoiler alert, it's both. You peek over their shoulders. One man lifts a small clay tablet, crusted in dirt, its symbols still sharp. "Looks like chicken scratches," he mutters. But it isn't. It's cuneiform, unreadable, mysterious, and about to kickstart a whole new field, Assyriology. For centuries, these tablets sat forgotten under layers of rubble and sand, and now they're re-emerging, silent voices from a world no one remembered. At first, no one knows what to make of them. Are they pictures? A code? A calendar? Historians still debate who cracked cuneiform first, but it took years of slow, obsessive work, letter by letter, symbol by symbol. Imagine trying to decode a lost language written with a triangle-tipped chopstick. Here's a quirky side note. One of the first tablets deciphered was a receipt for goats. After all that mystery, turns out humanity's oldest document was just someone saying, "Yes, I paid." You enter a study room in London, where scholars are hunched over trays of tablets, whispering excitedly. Some are biblical archaeologists looking for ancient confirmation. Others are linguists. A few are just nerds in dusty coats. But all are mesmerized. And slowly, as the signs begin to make sense, the floodgates open. Entire libraries are uncovered. Trade routes mapped. Myths reassembled. Bureaucracies exposed. Mesopotamia, silent for millennia, begins to speak. One scribe's joke is discovered, a proverb about a lazy son and an angry ox. A punchline from 4,000 years ago. You laugh. The room does, too. You lean over one scholar's shoulder as he whispers a translated line from Gilgamesh. He who saw the deep, the foundation of the world. You shiver. The past isn't just alive. It's profound. Cuneiform never fully died. It morphed, faded, was forgotten. But once uncovered, it refused to stay buried. Today, there are digital databases of tablets. 3D reconstructions. Scholars translating beer rations with software that didn't exist 10 years ago. And the best part? We're still not done. Thousands of tablets remain unread. Some in museum basements. Others boxed in private collections. What stories wait inside? What ancient sarcasm? What complaints about bosses? What quiet heartbreak? You run your hand over the tablet in front of you, dusty and warm in the light. Not garbage. Not magic. Just memory. Made solid. You return one last time to that first moment. The clay token in your hand, still slightly damp, shaped like a cone or a sphere. It's simple, quiet, humble. And yet, from this lump of earth, everything else unfolded. You walk through the entire journey again, but now in reverse. The abstract cuneiform signs fade back into pictographs. The stylus is set down, and thumbprints reappear. The bully seal closes over tokens once more. And there you are, squatting in the dirt, counting sheep with little clay counters, unaware that your boredom has just sparked the greatest invention in human history. Because writing was never about grand visions. It wasn't about philosophy or poetry, not at first. It was born from counting sacks of grain, from double-checking goat deliveries, from the quiet fury of someone who had been underpaid and needed proof. Historians still argue whether writing was inevitable or whether it was a fluke of Mesopotamia. Could it have emerged in Egypt first? Or the Indus Valley? Maybe. But here, in the cradle of Sumer, the idea took root. And it didn't just survive, it took over. And here's one last quirky fact. The Sumerians never invented an eraser. If you made a mistake on clay, you either smoothed it over or started fresh. Permanent, in a way that paper never was. Each mistake left a ghost. Each correction, a scar. As the night deepens, you look around and see it everywhere. On the temple steps, an inscription recording a donation of bronze bowls. In the scribe's office, a ledger detailing barley owed by a fisherman who never showed up. In a love letter tucked into a tomb. Words pressed in clay. Whispering still after 4,000 years. This wasn't just writing. It was humanity, trying to remember. And now, you breathe slower. You let your mind soften, like wet clay before the stylus touches it. All around you, the noise of civilization quiets. The tapping of styluses fades. The scribes fold their arms and lean back. The traders close their ledgers. The temple walls glow with the last of the evening firelight. You lie down beside a half-finished tablet, its signs trailing off into nothing. Maybe the scribe was called away. Maybe he fell asleep like you are now, tired from pressing meaning into something so small. The air is warm, still carrying the scent of old earth and burnt oil. A breeze tiptoes past the doorway. Somewhere in the distance, a child is practicing his first wedge strokes, whispering the sounds to himself, not knowing they'll outlive kings. You feel your thoughts slow, like a river narrowing. There's comfort in knowing that writing came not from greatness, but from grain, from the quiet rhythm of labor, from from a human urge to keep track, from a world where the future depended on remembering just one more sheep. Let your eyes close now. Let the marks fade. The world is safe. The story is recorded, and nothing else needs to be said.